Potential tropical storms for Florida and the Eastern Pacific on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for July 29. Around the world, there are no active tropical storms, but there's still plenty of areas of interest to be tracking over the course of this week, including in the Atlantic. A few other areas of interest across the Pacific as well, east and west at the moment. But first, let's take a look at the Atlantic Ocean on day 59 of hurricane season. A moderate chance of development from the central Atlantic once again. 40% chance that we're giving for this area of interest, which should be heading towards the Lesser Antilles later on in the week. Expected to pass through the Leeward Islands onto the Greater Antilles perhaps, and then towards the Bahamas. On day 76 of the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, we've got now an 80% chance that system should become a tropical cyclone and potentially a strong one. Behind it, 40% chance for another one there too, and a 20% chance out west for an area of interest that still might persist a little bit longer. And we're now giving a 30% chance for an area of interest that's starting to look a little bit better on the latest imagery, which will be heading northwards, way out over the open western Pacific. Shouldn't be affecting any land areas and could become a brief tropical storm. In the North Indian Ocean, there's nothing much to track here, just a lot of cloud cover in the area, mainly along the coastal regions of India, but also off the southwestern part of Myanmar over the tropical equatorial zones. And for what it's worth, in the southwest Indian Ocean, there's less cloud over the Seychelles today, more towards the eastern part of the basin, mainly over no territory, but perhaps some extra cloud for Diego Garcia and the British Indian Ocean territory today. Well, let's check in on this AOI in the Atlantic. It hasn't been designated as an invest, but it is 962 kilometers from Paramaribo, 1155 from Barbados, 1312 from St. Lucia, 1380 from Dominica, and 1924 from Puerto Rico. Might be giving you some familiar vibes from what we were looking at this time last month, but it shouldn't be anything like a Beryl, right? Well, it shouldn't. From what we're seeing on model runs, it is expected to, if anything, become a tropical storm only. Here it is on satellite imagery though, and you can see it's already trying to get a low-level circulation there, almost established by the looks of things. Out towards the west is where the convection is at this time, and it is going to be another very small system. It is the wide shot, just showing you how small it is there. It's right at the bottom right-hand corner there of the image. So an extremely small system, but as it develops, it is expected to take more of a northerly component, so it should miss places like Barbados and the places that were affected by Beryl and move further north. Now this is the Eastern Pacific, where we've got a lot of activity here. You can see big bursts of convection, the main one of course being that 80% system that we were looking at there. And this is the Western Pacific, a little look at what's going on there. And potential for one or two little systems to develop. I think we're looking off towards the right there for that potential other system. Now this is 97W, which we've scrubbed from our recording now, moving over Taiwan, and you can see it's producing a little bit of heavy precipitation, and it is right where Gaemi was prowling along the coast for a while as it did its loop-the-loop and then made landfall near Hualien City north of there. And this is another invest, 98W I believe this one is, currently located over the Micronesian islands, although I can't actually see any land masses on that picture, but it is way out over the Western Pacific, throwing up some convection, but not too much going on with that system, at least at this time. And this is a look at the Atlantic, looking at that non-tropical low there that's just off the coast of New England. We did think that that might have had a brief chance of development. Well, that's gone now. This is the Caribbean region, and there's a little bit of cloudiness and showers occurring across Hispaniola and southern Cuba maybe later, but in general a fairly quiet picture. And this is over the open Atlantic, and again that system there that we're watching, the 40% down towards the left hand side there, very small on the infrared imagery, and this is off the coast of Africa. 1 or 2 waves just on their way again. I'm not sure if that system that is developing from a wave, but a wave will be catching up to it and hurrying it along. There's the Eastern Pacific. Huge amounts of convection off the coast of Mexico from that 80% system. If it had a center there, it will be off towards the southeast by the looks of things. And then this one towards the west as well, that's the other system, that 20%. Still throwing up a lot of convection there too, so can't be fully ruled out, that particular one. And this is the Central Pacific. We don't often look here, but just to the south of Hawaii, you can see a few little clouds blowing up from this potential other disturbance that is active right now, but not expected to develop. And this is the Western Pacific, where we're showing a few little flurries of cloud. Again, the Philippines getting a fair amount of rain there, the mountains of Luzon, and there's a wider shot of the whole Pacific region. There's a lot of disturbed weather around, but they're all going to struggle to try and get dominance of the basin. North Indian Ocean, tons of monsoonal showers occurring all across Thailand down towards the Bay of Bengal. Southern Myanmar as well caught up in that, and the West Bengal region of India, and along the western coast of India into Pakistan as well. We're seeing lots of thunderstorms and showers there over that region, just about to move off the coast. So, sea surface temperatures, I think these graphics haven't changed since yesterday, but obviously still saying pretty much the same thing. Temperatures are still quite elevated in the Eastern Pacific. Where that area of interest is, it's around 31 or 32 degrees. Of course, this potential system could end up in the Gulf later on, or somewhere near the Florida Peninsula. Well, either side of Florida is looking very good indeed. Temperatures sky high, up to 32 degrees in a few spots. And in the Western Pacific, all across the whole ocean really, well out to sea, well to the north, we've got those warm waters. Anywhere that's yellow or higher can sustain a substantial tropical cyclone. And this is the North Indian Ocean, where we're having a few areas there that are still quite warm, but in general it's cooled slightly here due to the enhanced cloud cover, but still looking good, 28 to 30 degrees in general. And this is the anomalies looking across the whole world here. The Atlantic is a lot above average there, up to 3 or 4 degrees above where that invest is right now, and possibly 5 degrees above average near Atlantic Canada. Eastern Pacific also looking good now, a few spots there above average after a slow start in terms of temperatures. And the West Pacific also looking decent, tropical zones a little bit above average, the subtropical zones a lot above, look at that near Japan. And looking at the oceanic heat content today, well, it's building back up again near Taiwan, of course, where Gaemi took a lot of that energy out, but it is building back in again. Philippine Sea, extremely high values still. Eastern Pacific, a few areas of high values as well there in a few spots. Now, the Atlantic still increasing in a few spots here as well, although maybe waning in some parts of the Caribbean, but in general, it is still looking very good there across that whole corridor and east of the Lesser Antilles as well, just out to sea a little bit there, ahead of that area of interest. Higher amounts of oceanic heat content there could sustain that system better than expected. Well, the GFS still isn't sold very much on this system so far, but you can just about see its track there. It actually starts turning northwest, and then it turns west again towards Puerto Rico, and then on towards Hispaniola. Other models are more keen on this system than the GFS. The CMC, for instance, I think it was developing it into a substantial tropical storm near Florida. ECMWF does the same east of Florida, near the northernmost Bahamas, although it is pretty clear that it doesn't actually develop straight away. It looks very unlikely that it will do that. Now, the Eastern Pacific, we're looking out for these systems. So on the left there's number 1, in the middle number 2, and on the right you might start seeing number 3 appear shortly, but of course it's the middle one that gets strongest earliest, becoming a very substantial hurricane there, at least category 2 by the time we get to the end of the 5-day period there on the GFS model, moving west-northwestwards, following almost in Bud's footsteps actually, but it doesn't really affect any land areas. That second system getting towards hurricane status by day 5 as well. Now this is the Western Pacific, and you can see a little tropical storm trying to form there. There it is, moving northwards. That's the one we've marked at 30% right now, moving well out over open water, not really affecting any land areas, and it will get shoveled up by another disturbance later on in that model run, which you'll probably see on the next phase. But there's that brief tropical storm period. Now let's take a look at rainfall over the area, and of course rainfall is difficult to predict when we're not sure how much the storm will develop and where. But in general, we are looking obviously at elevated rainfall amounts all across the Greater Antilles, getting in general 3 to 4 inches in a few spots there, up to 100 millimeters in Puerto Rico, a little bit higher than that in parts of the mountains of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Across Cuba, getting up above 50 millimeters, and in South Florida we could get up to 4.5 to 5 inches there, which is over 100 millimeters as well, and some high amounts further north as well in parts of Georgia, 3 inches. Meanwhile, in the Eastern Pacific, in the longer range, we've got all this going on. 2 strong hurricanes. The second one, that's the 40% chance we're giving for later on in the week, really gets very powerful. High in Category 4 by the looks of things there. So it does look like a interesting period in the Eastern Pacific where we might finally get these big storms. And of course, I think I'm trying to figure out what the names were this year. D is Daniel this year, so in 2006 that was a very strong storm back then as well. Now here in the Western Pacific, you can see 2 systems trying to develop there in the upper latitudes. Of course, once again, sea surface temperatures good, even at that far north, for a little while at least, where that potential system is. So it's all quite a messy situation right there, with a lot of systems trying to develop all out of themselves there, out over the open area, almost like a Gaia really. But there we are. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Full City merch store, where you can take a look at all our items as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request. And of course, our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirt still available, because we are still waiting for that dang blasted storm. It's been nearly 5 years. Well, in the Scilly range, we're not going to see it there either. These 2 very powerful hurricanes continue off towards the northwest. The first one still going actually into those higher latitudes, followed by that second one, which was huge, and then a third hurricane forming in the later period here. So is the East Pac really starting to get going? Well, we'll have to find out. When we see one, we'll start believing, I think. But by the end of that 16-day period there, we go through 4 storms, a 4th one forming at the end there off the coast of Central America, moving west-northwestwards, a quite broad system too. Long way out though. Meanwhile, in the Western Pacific, we're seeing more shenanigans here. A few systems trying to develop again along this big gyric front. And there we have another big sloppy system trying to develop off the end of that as well, trying to move northwards by the looks of things. None of these really affecting land very much, except perhaps that last one if it does actually develop. But that, again, is an extremely long way out. Well, certainly a lot to cover right there. On this day, it was another system that was featured on our little Taiwan trail when Gaemi was affecting the area. We were looking at strong typhoons that made landfall in Taiwan in July, and Taraji was another one of those back in 2001 when it impacted the coast, the southeast coast, as a Category 3 near its peak intensity today. And we also had what was left of Kong-Ray, the remnants of it, moving up towards the northeast, well to the east of Japan, southeast of the Kuril Islands, heading up towards the northern islands there, the Bering Sea Strait. Well, back to today then. It's that one AOI, which it's frustrating me that they don't have an invest designation on that. They seem to be very slow in the NHC zones. The next name in the Atlantic, though, is Debbie. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Carlotta, and in the Central Pacific, it is still Hone. 27 storms so far this year. It is still a very slow start, despite the few little exceptions. Maria is next up in the West Pacific, Asna in the North Indian Ocean as well. And moving towards the southern hemisphere, of course, things will start up there in a few months probably. You can't rule out an early season system though. Robin is next in the Australian region, Ansha in the southwest Indian Ocean, and it's Pitta in the South Pacific. That's it from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow.
Become an Ultimate Fan today.